Thank you. Great to be back in Brampton. And I say back because, can you hear me okay? Yeah. Um, I'll get into it a little bit later on, but this is really my backyard growing up. I grew up in Streetsville. So, Roanna, it's great to be back in Brampton, a little different Brampton than I remember as a kid. But nonetheless, we'll talk about all things Brampton, Peel County, and the province of Ontario. I understand Minister Sarkari is going to have a table chat. Be really hard on him, okay? He's a great friend, a great colleague, as is Hardeep, Amarjot, and Graham. Brampton really is fortunate to have strong voices at Queen's Park, and not only voices, but representing the city and this region in a very strong way. And again, I know Prab is going to be here, and we share a very, I'll tell the story. He and I don't really look the same. Would you agree? Same height, kind of. But what we always do is when we go to a public meeting, or with people, we'll say, can you guys tell us apart? We're actually twins, And people, they go, and then of course he and I, like children, howl laughing when people look at us. But he's really become a good friend, as have all the MPPs, and we all share a tremendous passion for this province, for this country, and I honor their service and success. And to everyone here from the Brampton Council and the region, thank you for your service. And Paul and I had a great chat leading up to my remarks today and getting up to speed in your nice new construction next door, all things transportation. And again, I'll tell the story that, of course, I grew up being a Bill Davis huge supporter and one of my mentors, and our family knew Mr. Davis, and I never could call him Bill, always called him Mr. Davis, and we used to have lunches post his time as the premier, and always encouraged me to run. And ultimately I did. Unfortunately, didn't get to see me elected, but Neil, his son, is a great friend as well, but truly Mr. Ontario in many respects. Patrick Brown, also a very good friend. Your mayor's doing a great job. And trust me, my phone, his texts, his passion, his persistence is always noted. He is an extreme defender of Brampton and Peel County, for that matter. And I can tell you that we talk all the time. So it's really, really good. But I'll tell you my little anecdote. So I grew up in Streetsville, not too far, right? And I remember when I was a kid, Streetsville was about 6,000 to 7,000 people. And I think if I'm right, Brampton was around 30,000 to 40,000 people. I think I'm about right. And to show you how life has changed, we used to get on our bikes in Streetsville and drive to the mecca of the world, which was Shoppers World. So we thought it was so cool to get on our bikes, and think of that today, driving through the Credit View and zigzagging up Second Line, and we'd ultimately find our way and stop at the Credit River and fish and play and then do whatever we had to do and come home. Think about doing that today. You just wouldn't do it. But different times, and certainly grown. You drive through that region. Now, we came in today, and it's hard for me to even recognize. But I also, in my early days in my career, I came to Peel. Does anyone remember Peel Seed Growers Cooperative, right at number 7? Yeah. So Bruce Shaw used to run that cooperative, and he was a master feeds dealer. And when I was a territory manager, we used to see Bruce, and we'd golf every now and then. We'd come downtown and have lunch. And so I've got very, very many connections to Brampton, and glad to be back here today. So that being said, I want to start out by recognizing and thanking the Brampton Board of Trade for what you're doing here today. The white paper, although I haven't had a chance to read it, I heard a little bit enough to be dangerous now, but transportation is key. And I say it to Prab all the time. If I get one major complaint as an MPP for Elgin, Middlesex, London, and Southwestern Ontario, it's usually MTO related. We're a big province, and getting around this province isn't like it used to be, especially in the GTHA. And what you're doing here in Brampton, I think, is very commendable. And I applaud you for the work you're doing and getting the brightest and the best in the room here to listen and learn, which is really what I've been doing all summer, is traveling the province. Paul said, how are things at Queen's Park? I said, I think I've been there 2 or 3 times since May, seriously, because I've been on the road, listening and learning and understanding the dilemma, the challenges, the opportunities we have in the housing sector. And you guys are part of that solution, the needed solution. And I know I'm right when I say this. Now, Brampton is bigger than Mississauga. So congratulations on that, I think. Mayor Brown and Mayor Parrish can argue about different things, but at the end of the day, if you're not the fastest growing city in the province, you're right up there, 1, 2, 3. And it's noticeable when you drive in. So managing that growth, creating opportunities for that growth is something I know you're here today to talk about. So when we talk about housing, let's get right to the core here. And I'm going to say this a few times today. Who here doesn't agree with me when I say it takes too long and it costs too much to build a house in Ontario? 100%. And I'll talk about some of the things we're doing to change that. But again, I'm going to repeat it. It takes too long and it costs too much. The too long part is our fault. It's government's fault, both provincially and municipally. And I'll talk about why Bill 17 is going to help solve that problem. The cost too much is the growth in our population, demand for housing, the right type of housing. And obviously post-COVID, we've seen construction costs rise exponentially, starting to come down. They say 18%, but so far, but I think more to go. But the big thing around housing, and again, this is going to be part of my comments today. We can build housing, yes, but if we don't have the critical infrastructure in place, roads, transportation, water, wastewater, if we don't have that in place, how are you going to build homes? And the Premier announced at AMO, we're adding another $1.6 billion to the infrastructure fund for municipalities to apply and successfully invest in the critical infrastructure we need, which totals to $4 billion now. But the part that I get a kick out of, the part that scares me, to be blunt, is you've talked to the Water Main and Sewer Association. I never get it right. But they estimate to replace critical aging infrastructure and new infrastructure is going to be a minimum right now in the next 10 to 15 years, $160 billion. So if you say it quick, there's lots of billions around. But frankly, we don't as a province, you don't as a municipality have enough bandwidth to invest in that infrastructure. So that's why we're looking at different formulas, different opportunities that I'll talk about as part of our Building Faster, Smarter and Faster Act that we approved back in May. So the other side of the equation is labor. As I think you know, we have a tough situation in housing right now, and we're losing critical jobs to that sector, and that scares me because if we don't maintain that critical skill to get homes built when we need them, and they move to Alberta, they move to the States, or they just find another job somewhere else, when this housing market turns around, and it will, it always has, and it will again, we are going to be left short. So that is why, along with my colleagues, Minister Piccini and Minister Quinn, we continue to ensure that we have the workforce in place to build the homes we need. That's why we announced $75 million to train more students in demand jobs in construction through the Ministry of Colleges and University. And last week, we announced some more Future Faster program working along with the OHBA to make sure that that happens. So I'm looking back at Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, Scott Collier. What have we invested now? $2.5 billion in skills development, I believe, or will have. So again, infrastructure and labor is a pretty big part to getting homes built and home builds faster. So let's talk about Bill 17, which is what we approved in the spring. The legislature passed with not unanimous, but pretty close, some opposition party support. Really does a few things. And again, I want to start off by saying our job as a provincial government is to help create the conditions for homes to be built and built faster. I don't see the province, I know the Premier doesn't see the province getting into the construction of housing. Developers do a good job at that, builders do a good job at that, not-for-profit does a fantastic job at that. So we have to create the conditions. working with you and the municipalities to make sure we reduce the time it takes to get shovels in the ground. I've looked at some projects recently, some real pro formas that have come to my desk, and in the GTA, it can be up to 31% of the cost of a condo or a new home tied to the soft cost of HST, PST, development charges, extra study costs, extra costs to get a building permit. It takes too long. It costs too much. But the too long part really is part of our accountability to reduce that time and reduce those studies. So what this bill did, number one, was cap the studies that municipalities can ask builders to accomplish. And in the process, we're going to come up with regulations to standardize that right across the province. So I know some are important, wind studies, shade studies. I like chocolate milk studies, but some of these studies are put in the way, they're NIMBYism, to prevent housing being built. So we are going to reduce that, still going to make sure that we follow the right guidelines, but put the regulations in place to ensure that that takes place. Secondly, the building code. As I tell people when I got into my office at the end of March, and I walked into a boardroom, and one of the credenzas were 2 binders. And I've since weighed them, by the way. They're 13 pounds, or combined, it's 13 pounds. And what is that? That's the building code for Ontario. It's a good building code. Maybe a little onerous at times, but it's a solid building code. So what do? We have 444 municipalities. And what do each one of them do? And I shouldn't say each one, but many do. They decide that they should add to the building code, that they've got different iterations they'd like to add to the building code. That takes time. I would talk to a builder in London, Ontario, and he constructs purpose-built rentals throughout the province. Very successful company, been around for generations. 5 different communities, 5 different building codes he has to deal with. It's ridiculous. So what we've done in this bill is we've reduced the iterations again. So the code is king. If we need to change the code, we'll change the code provincially, but not municipality by municipality. So again, trying to lower the time it takes to get shovels in the ground. The third thing we did was we deferred development charges. And we'd like to see, obviously, development charges come down, and I'm going to give a partial solution for that in a minute. But with DCs, what we want to do is defer them. We're going to defer them until closing. So it doesn't get rid of them, but for builders, it helps free up cash flow, that they don't have to pay that upfront cost, and it allows them to get shovels again in the ground faster and get building. So that's really good. It's been received positively, and I will say with this bill, Bill 17, OHBA supported it, BUILD supported it, ResCon supported it, and yes, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario supported it as well. So we're very, very pleased with that support. The other thing that we did was eliminated DCs on long-term care homes. We know that we need to get another 39,000 to 40,000 spots in place ASAP. And in the last number of months, I think I've signed 4 or 5 critical MZOs, municipal ministerial zoning orders, to get these critical beds built and these buildings built throughout Ontario. And we're excited about that. I want to commend Brampton. Paul, what did you do last week? You reduced DCs on, what did you reduce them on? Purpose rentals. And I know I was talking to Mayor Nuttall and Barry, he's doing the very same thing. So anything we can do to create that environment, again, to get shovels in the ground faster is what this is all about. So let me tell you one of the things we're looking at here in Peel. And I think it's going to be a pilot project, and we put it as part of the bill. So I talked about infrastructure a little earlier. And when you take a look at what we need for wastewater, and let's just stick to that for the time being, as we're looking at services in the Peel region, one of the things that we need to do is create wastewater and water solutions for the future. But there's only one taxpayer, and the billions it's going to cost, I don't think council wants to raise all those taxes. I know provincially we don't, and federally, well, that's another subject I'll come to at the end of my discussion. But what we're doing is we're putting a wastewater, or let's call it a municipal service corporation or utility corp, a utility model in place. We want Peel to be the pilot project. So what does it mean? We want to attract capital, long-term capital, patient capital, probably pension funds investing in it. And then from that fund, we can invest. Municipalities can borrow from it and can invest in long-term critical infrastructure. So what will we do? You'd amortize it over, like a DC is 2-3 years. It's like the growth doesn't pay for growth. You pay the DC up front, and then it's part of the house. Now what we're looking at is amortizing that kind of like your electricity bill over a long-term period. So you can amortize that money over 50, 60, 70 years, and hopefully, at competitive rates. And so far what we've seen, we think it can work. We still want it to have an element of public ownership for sure, that it is not just dissipated away to private interests. But we're having very good success in attracting the capital to come our way. Now to get the program in place, and as you know, government never maybe moves at the speed. I call it moves at glacial speed, and I come from industry where you have to be a little more nimble, but nonetheless, we're pushing it along, and I think it's going to be a strong benefit for not only Brampton, but all of Peel County, and hopefully a model for the rest of the province to follow. Because think of it, if it's 160 billion is what they're saying we need to do, it really probably is 200 billion. So where's that money going to come from? We just can't raise taxes to do that. So municipal corp idea, I always use the analogy of monopoly. Remember, you'd play Monopoly and you could buy, if you got the public utility corp, you got to get some housing and stuff on that. It was really good. I think it's going to be a strong investment for the future and something that we're excited to obviously support as a government and go from there. So again, housing starts are in a tough place. You see the numbers and the numbers don't lie. The bottom line, again, is it takes too long and it costs too much, and we're changing that. And I always tell the story. When I bought my first house in 1983, I was just out of the University of Guelph, and, buy your house. That's what you do. You build equity, right? Who doesn't agree with that? In this country, it's capital gains free for now, please God. So I bought a house. It was about 1,000 square feet, linoleum, no marble, no hardwood floors, arborite, nice basic carpet, 3 bedrooms, 40-foot lot. I paid $54,000 for it. I was making $30,000 a year, and interest rates were 19%. And I remember signing the offer to purchase. My hand was literally shaking. But think about it. And then the interest rates dropped around 12, and I thought I died and gone to heaven. But think about it, 30,000 a year, 54,000, 19%. I could make the math work. Today, that house in Guelph, Ontario is valued at about $1 million. So think of the income. So if take my job at Master Feeds, take what that job would be paying today, would probably be, I'm guessing, 85,000. The math doesn't work with that salary. I could do it on my own. Now look at interest rates. What's interest rates for that? 5%? I remember talking to my father back then. He had an interest on a loan on his house, was amortized over 30 plus years, and he wouldn't pay it off. I said, why won't you pay it off? He says, it's 6%. I can invest my money at 10 or 12. Smart. It's reversed today. So the math doesn't work today. And what's the big difference? So I was at a builders symposium in Cambridge about a month ago, and I asked them, there was some developers from Guelph. I said, what would that lot have been worth? It was probably built in the late 70s. I was the first or second owner, or second or third owner of it. What would that lot have been worth? He goes, 20 to 22, 3, 4,000. I said, okay. So what's that worth today? Goes 40 foot, only 450,000. I said, so you take a look at how that lot value went up and take a look at the income I was making then and what it would be worth today. Again, the math doesn't work. So somehow we have to find creative ways to get supplies on the market. And, everyone's hit the pause button. Uncertainty is the word I use. Trump certainly hasn't helped. And again, I commend our Premier call him Captain Canada now, but he's done a tremendous job of holding the president accountable, whatever that means to the president. And people are waiting for interest rates to drop. Think 5% they want them to go down. I'm not so sure it's the magic bullet. It could be if you borrowed money at 1.75% and now your mortgage is going to be 4 or 5%. It may dig into your cash flow. I get it totally. The federal government promised that they would reduce DCs and make municipalities whole. Haven't seen that one yet. Hoping so in the next budget. They also promised that they would reduce HST, federal portion, on first-time home buyers for new construction. And that has not been announced. I was at the federal, provincial, and territorial meeting a couple of weeks ago in Vancouver, and I brought it up continuously to the point where I think Minister Robertson was saying, enough already. But I always say a promise made should be a promise kept, and we're not going to relent. And I'm still hopeful that in the November, what did he announce? The first week of November, the budget will be, is we'll see some relief there. So we're going to continue to work and work hard. So again, I'll conclude by saying we've got a lot of heavy lifting ahead. We're trying our best to create those conditions. We need municipality support like you're doing here in Brampton. And I think when it turns, we're going to be ready, but let's make sure we have the infrastructure in place and the labor in place. And, when you think of it, when I drove my bike from Streetsville to Shoppers World, the population of this province was about 7 to 8 million people. We're 16 million people strong today, more than double. And the dream of home ownership is the quintessential dream in Canada. And we're going to continue to work hard to make sure that that dream can continually come true for our kids and our grandkids for generations to come. Thank you for your time and attention.